that, you know, if they're gonna be signing off on that, they're basically saying that the code doesn't allow you to stop without any contiguous to the ground. You guys have said it's okay with you guys, but they're saying, the code says, no, it must be continuous to grade. Can you put it in writing back to them?
That's current code, and under the old designs, the city of Portland with the great City of Appeals, we allowed a lot of that stuff to happen, so I would imagine that Mike Wakowitz would be the official judge, if nothing else, a disclaimer in your reports
Yeah.
indicating that this fire escape did not have any means of going completely to the ground at the time that I initiated my examination of this, and there's your statement.
So it's a
You didn't
disclaimer.
build it, so you aren't responsible for how it was built. You're looking at, is it really sufficient and adequate to hold the loads that it's supposed to meet under the city's beautiful guideline?
No, it's fine. Part of it is just hearing that there's an answer and there's simple devices out there to walk
Yep,
on.
it's called a fold-out ladder,
Yeah.
and you can make that as a recommendation, whether or not the city now says, you know what, for us to go back and fix this code mistake that we've allowed in a blanket, yes, okay, as is, they may say, you know what, we'll give you 5 years. In the next 5-year cycle, we'd like you to now continue to ground, because otherwise, when you guys show up at a fire escape problem, you have your ladder for your men, but then you need to have a second ladder for these people to get off the fire escape, because they're all gonna be bundled up on that lower block, because they have no way, they can't use your current ladder that goes to the fire ladder.
Well, they could imitate the one customer who decided
Helicopter.
to jump onto the car, and that broken ankle didn't take him too long to heal from.
And that's where the liability, when they self-jump down, and whether it's onto a car or whatever it may be, it opens up some liability for the city. Because if it's against code and people are forced to use it against code, it opens up a liability window. Let's take a look at this. This is a case where we were an expert witness on, where a firefighter fell through 3 treads there. During a fight, he was supposed to go up there and pop out that window. There was a woman and a child up there. When he went up, he actually fell through here, landed down here, went back up. 27-year-old firefighter. By the time he rescued the people and brought him down, he basically broke a vertebrae, but he was basically out. The key about this case that changed everything was that this wasn't an injury-related case. He sued the owner directly. He was able to prove through the metallurgist that the fire escape has not been examined and/or tested for at least 25 years, and that's when all this examination information that we had came into play. As we did the analysis for him and worked with him, when we did the examination there, we had treads, we had rust, as we were going up, and again, fire officials, building officials, lawyers, people, were all there. As we were walking up this fire escape, treads are still falling on us 2 years after the accident. So they went and fixed those 3 treads, but they didn't do anything else to the rest of they left the fire escape in the exact, so they settled this case. And the owner was exposed because the insurance company wouldn't deal with it, because it says, you know what? You're required, you have a fiduciary responsibility to maintain the fire escapes at all times, which is what the code says. And you haven't, and we can prove that you haven't for 25 years or more. And so basically they lost the case, but this is the evidence that we got that basically proved, and this is an example of the tread, the process of when the tread starts getting rust in it, and those bolts that I've shared and put around, you can start seeing that the rust starts eating on the inside and starts making those connections paper thin. And as they grow and they start separating with ice jacking and rust jacking, what happens to that tread? It pulls away from the stringer, and what happens to you? Whether a fireman going up or a person coming down, this is when you get tread failure. It's because either ice jacking has forced the tread away from the rivet shaft, or as some of these bolts that you have floating around, the whole interior is eaten, and what do you get when you put enough pressure on it with a foot? And that fireman fell through 3 of them. 3 of them. And basically he couldn't work the rest of his life. He was out for the rest of his life. So this is all actual evidence that we used in the case to basically say, you know, the owner saw it coming, okay? So cantilevers, now we were just on cantilevers, right? So here's how the rest of the cantilevers in the United States are built. Basically, I'm going to give you an example of what happens in the history of a cantilever. See this weight box there? See that weight box there? A lot of the weight boxes are either huge cast iron pieces, or they take a box and they clean out their shop. And they get every punch, every leftover cuttings, and they fill in this box. And sometimes these boxes are properly covered, and sometimes they're not. So what happens to rust? If somebody still has that rusty piece, a 1/4 inch grows to 1 inch, can somebody just lift it? So that's what a 1/4 inch of rust looks like. I mean, a 1/4 inch of steel grows to 1 inch, and it gets heavier. So as soon as a fire escape box, cantilever box gets heavier, what happens to it?
It overlifts.
Right? It's a seesaw. 1/3 is for the weight, 2/3 is for the stairs, pivot in the middle, you add weight to the box, what happens to it? You're an inspector walking by and you see this thing pointing to the sky, what do you write? It doesn't look natural. So what do you write? You write a violation. So I'm the owner of that building and I don't want you to write me a violation, so what do? How do I fix this? Because I've had somebody come down and look at it and say, we can rebalance this for about $4,000 or $5,000.
Sure.
So you go to Home Depot and you get what? $10 worth of chain, and what do? You chain it here, you lift it there, and you tie it to some structural member, or you tie it to a piece of grating or to anything? Tie it to the grating. And now she's horizontal. Any violations coming? So if you see a chain on a fire escape cantilever, balanced or unbalanced?
Maybe.
So with that, you start getting these things out of bounds. So here's how a cantilever works. In the entire US, they have what's called a release arm on them. You guys don't have them here. You guys tend to have one that you walk out 3 to 5 treads. You use your weight to drop it down. She hits the ground, you egress off, it goes right back up. If you add weight to the back, a lot of weight to the back, you go out 2 treads or you go out 5 to 10 treads. So the way that they're supposed to be is you're supposed to come down the stairs, and by the time you hit the pivot point, because you've released it. So let's give you an example. You got a woman dragging a child, right? There's a fire, the woman, she's 150 pounds, the child is 50 pounds, she comes down to the stairs, there's no release arm, she goes down to the pivot point, she walks out on the pivot point, the cantilever's got a chain on it, so it's not pointing up, it's actually horizontal. She walks out 3 treads, anything happens? She walks out 5 treads, anything starts happening? A little movement maybe? She walks out a couple more, and then what happens to that cantilever? She starts coming down. It's supposed to come down 2 to 3 feet per second, hit the ground and stay down. What does it come down? 5 to 10 feet per second. Once it hits the ground, what happens to that woman? She's either going to get catapulted off, and the child's already screaming, right? So, but she held on, and she walks down the rest of the treads, because now it hit the ground, because she's given it enough weight to counteract it. She gets to the very last stretch, she's dragging her 50-pound child behind her, and she steps off the fire escape cantilever with 150 pounds. What happens to the cantilever now? Takes that 50-pound child and does what? There's a French word for that, it's a trebuchet, right? Trebuchet? Not French. All right, so, but that child doesn't get catapulted off. That child is up there holding on. And then all of a sudden you come down, and the mother's saying to the child what? 12 feet. And the child does what? Screams and cries. The firemen come running down. Well, actually, the woman there basically runs to the front of the building to go back into the apartment and do what? Goes do the whole process again and save who? Her child. Does she have the keys with her in her nightgown that she came down the fire? So all of a sudden she grabs a brick out of the street and she's ready to smash the front door in, and who shows up? Firefighters. They come running down the alleyway and they walk up to the child and say, hey, do what? Child says, what? So now the firefighter goes back to his truck and gets what? The ladder.
Pipe pole, so you can poke.
Oh, that's right, it is a pipe pole. So he goes and grabs the pipe pole, brings the thing down, reunites the mother and the child, puts his foot on there, and it happened to be Stu White working that night. And he's sitting on that fire escape and he's holding it there so that who can use it now? The fireman.
He's going to be working with it.
He's gonna be, so the firemen are using now, but we've lost Stu because he has to do what on that now? Because it's out of bounds. He has to hold it. As soon as he lets go, what happens? So that's not how they work. They're supposed to work like this. You hit the release arm at the top of the platform. As soon as you release it, this perfectly balanced cantilever, 1/3 on the tail, 2/3 in the front, 25 pounds more on the nose. When you release it from above, she drops, hits the ground and stays down, and it's 2 to 3 feet per second. Here's the $1 million welding problem. This cantilever was the cause of a lawsuit. There used to be an angle bar welded, not by us, by somebody else 25 to 50 years ago, because these weights, because they're single weights on one side in Chicago, they're not double weighted. And so a lot of times these weights will make with fatigue, makes the tail angle of channel do what? twist out. So they put a 3x5 by 3/8 thick, 12-foot long angle on there to do what? To the back piece. To straighten it back out. All welded. And so they were doing all the re-bricking on the building and using the fire escape as a means of access. Look at all the torquing and look at all that wiggling going on. What does that do to welds? So they did this for about 2 months, until that angle did what? Broke all its welds and landed on who? One of the poor guys doing the cement work on the fire escape. When that guy got hit in the head, did he get maimed or get almost killed? When that happened, that guy sued who? Sued his boss, sued the management company, sued the owner of the building, sued the shoe store owner who was renting the building, sued the engineers that were involved in that, sued the city, sued the ironworking company that did all, everybody was in court for 7 years. This happened to be just a cement truck that showed up that day. They're usually 12 to 14 feet. If your cantilever's out of balance, what happens? This is what knocks them down. But let me finish the lawsuit that took 7 years. The guy wanted $22 million. There was 7 lawyers in there. Everybody, including the city of Chicago, was involved in the court case. Because guess what the city accepts as an affidavit? A simple form that says it's an opinion. I've looked at it, it looks structurally sound to me, and it looks painted to me. To the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, the fire escape is in conformity with the Chicago building code, right? So everybody got dragged, took 7 years, the guy wanted $22 million, he did get conked in the head. But what broke? The fire escape was fully refurbished in Louisville Load Test. But what about the weld? It looked spectacular, there was no rust. There was no rust anywhere in that connection. Nice and tight. What broke it? Well, after the piece finally conked him on the head, when you hit the ground and it torques like that, what happens to the weld? The rust inside that there was, because when you take an old rusty fire escape and you put a new piece of metal, metal up against it, and then you paint it, do you ever paint inside? So the 8 to 12 welds all around the whole piece, where did the weld stop rotting? From the outside in that had paint on it, or from the inside out through just natural moisture and condensation? So you have a weld rusting from the inside out, which can't be visibly seen by anybody here. There's no Superman here. And all of a sudden, you add the misuse. Can any contractor use a fire escape as a working platform? What's that do to any certification? So if you certify a fire escape and a month later, guys start fixing windows using your fire escape, what do they just do to the certification?
I assume that avoids it, but.
It avoids it. It's negated.
Why?
Anybody?
Egress only.
It's egress only. Can I, if I want to use it for a working platform, because I have no other choice, I got to do some windows or some sills, can I use it as a working platform? The answer is yeah. But what happens to the certification? It's negated. As soon as I'm done with all the work, what does the engineer have to do after all the work is complete? Reload test or recertify the entire fire escape. So as soon as somebody touches the fire escape for anything other than its intended use, what happens to the certification? So for 3 months, these guys were working on the whole side of a building, using it as, and then every day, because that was a busy alleyway for the hotel, they would come down 10 to 15 times a day. So if you hit a fire escape cantilever 10 to 15 times a day for about 60 days, what is going to start happening to it? What about the new bolts that we're putting in there? Forget just the weld. What about the bolts that were put in there? Are those now becoming suspect? So that was the crux of the case, but the key here was that weld. That once we got the piece off the guy's head, and you looked inside, there was no major rust jacking going on, but what was occurring was the rust was eating the weld from the inside out and nobody could see it. An X-ray or a radiograph would have caught it. Well, you don't radiograph fire escapes. And if you load tested that fire escape, even with half a weld still there, would it pass? So, you know what we do now because of the well, any well, which is not a norm for any fire escape out there. Welded fire escapes are not a norm because they can't breathe, they can't do this. So any welded connection we find anywhere, what do? Put a bolt. The weld stays, and a lot of times we seal the welds to stop any future corrosion growing in there, but that bolt becomes the primary. And that's just sort of a catch-all that says, and this cost $1 million. Let me tell you how it cost $1 million instead of 22. The guy, I just heard this actually just closed this year, like a month or so ago, 2 months. My lawyer called me and said, listen, the guy convinced 10 doctors that, you know, that this is all they could do, right? July 4th, all the people in the case basically hired an investigator. They followed him on July 4th, and he was running a marathon, kicking a soccer ball and playing, and they got him videotaped, you know, driving and doing all normal things. But whenever he had court cases or doctor's appointments, you know, so basically went from 22 to $1 million to say, you want, here's $1 million, so you don't go to jail, or we can just take this where it's going to go with this videotape. So it was borderline fraud, you know, but that's where they basically brought it down. But it still cost $1 million. I said, why? He goes, because he still got conked in the head. Was he wearing his helmet? No. And on that, basically, they were using it to go up and down, and then they use a ladder on the backside to get back up and continue working. So that's the case. But right now, guys, very quickly, this is how all fire escapes in the U.S. are built. The steel going into your building, is it 2 feet, 3 feet deep, or is it 8 to 12 inches deep? Every fire escape in the U.S. 8 to 12 inches deep. So once it gets beyond the veneer, it's only 8 to 12 inches deep in a pocket. Is there any brackets or any cross things welded back there so it doesn't pull out? Nothing. It's just a T-bar or an angle in there, pocketed, cemented, done. Got it? Every fire escape was built this way. So what happens is water, spalling, and a lot of times, a lot of work is done towards the surface and not into where it's structurally tied in. So what happens when you have a full set, two full sets of stairs on a bracket that is all by itself, because somebody took it out of here when they fixed this window, then they put that bracket back over here. Can a 4 or 5 foot C-channel carry 2 staircases on it when only 8 to 12 inches are buried into the wall? So this happens all the time. When you put the bracket, again, 8 to 12 inches deep, a lot of times it's buried back into the wall here, and you know what happens? That drives water back into your building. Okay? And then it either has a single bolt or a bracket at the top. But that's what it looks like. That's how all fire escapes are going into masonry buildings, that's how they look. And you get this kind of spalling when the water's driven into it. Through bolts. Some of them are big plates, some of them are these little cast iron buttons. And what do they do with that much force on a single brick? What do they do? Right? Every now and then you got so much water growing or hitting that fire escape that you get this. In order to get that much green on a wall, what do you have to have? A lot of water. So rust jacking. To grow 1 inch, this is a library in Boston. A public library. 1 inch on that gusset. What's holding up that platform and that staircase? The rust. Now, if you want to grow exotic ferns and exotic things, fire escapes now are a great place because nobody goes on them anyway. Firemen are not on them. Building inspectors are not on them. So if you've got some exotic ferns you want to grow, it takes a lot of water to grow. And the last thing, not the last thing, one of the ways to basically get a fire escape, if you have a problem in the wall, is laying it to the ground, sitting on a sonotube. This is how all fire escapes are built. And a lot of times they're not even pocketed into the building. They're just attached into the building with an angle or with not epoxies, but expansion bolts. Okay? And sometimes this is the answer when you have a wall situation. How are you going to cure it? You're going to put a leg to the ground. If the wall is in question, you put another leg along the building to the ground, what do you have? A freestanding structure. That's when you question the wall. Can't put razor wire on these fire escapes. People do. A lot of times you have trucks that hit something, and what do they blow out? The interior masonry or the exterior veneer? A lot of times it's just the exterior veneer that gets blown out, but sometimes people have to open it up even more to get inside to see what happened inside the wall there. And the last is wood structures. All wood structures must have a through bolt. When you ever get to a fire escape and you see 4, 6 lag screws, that indicates to you that somebody has not properly attached it with a through bolt and a plate. And that's usually 3/4, 5/8 or 3/4 through bolt with a plate, picking up some studs. You see a lot of lag screws, that means somebody didn't know what they were doing, and the answer is you just have to put in a through bolt. Cantilevers, see the release arm? The release arm here, there's 2 types of release arms. One that's here, and sometimes you have one that has a weight on the nose. Very difficult to balance, the ones that have the weight on the nose. But the release arm basically is, you know, 1/3 to the back, 2/3 to the front, and then when you release it, which is a simple bar that comes down and just releases, it lets the cantilever drop 2 to 3 feet per second. Otherwise, if they're hanging down and you got a cement truck backing in, can you see that thing up above? By the way, what happens when a trash truck, a cement truck, hits your fire escape? What do you call that?
Oops.
No, it's called a fire escape lottery ticket. Because here's what has to happen on that fire escape. First of all, the engineering firm is gonna get paid by who? The owner or the insurance company? The entire fire escape, not just the damaged cantilever, needs to be repaired. Because in order to bring it back into service, what must pass the inspection? The whole thing. So somebody gets there and they have a $10,000 damage to the cantilever and nothing else much more, but yet the rest of the fire escape has been ignored for 25 years. Guess what the insurance company has to pay? They pay for the cantilever and the refurbishment of the entire fire escape, and all fire escapes must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. So if the thing doesn't have any paint, what's the owner get? A paint job. So the next time a fire escape gets hit, a cantilever gets hit, guess what that means for the owner of the building? The entire system is out of service, and the entire system needs to be brought in. Yes?
A question for refurbishing guys, are you guys finding that homeowner insurance is paying for a lot of this work?
I am.
Red tag, are you?
Yeah.
So the insurance company covering the
Every time.
building's paying for it?
At 100%. A lot of times vendors just don't know it, or engineers are not aware of that clause, and they just fix that small piece. And it's right in their code. Must be brought back into service, the entire system. So if the entire system has been ignored by the owner, the insurance company is still paying the bill. And that has happened nationwide. I've done it all over the country. From California to Boston. You know, if it gets hit by a truck and there's insurance on that truck, and even if it's a hit and run, the insurance of the building, so don't forget, truck damage, the trucks pay for 100%. And there's no deductible. If it's a hit and run, the insurance, all you have to do, the law is very simple. You have to file a police report that it was a hit and run, call your insurance agent, and they'll come out and they'll send an adjuster, and then if it's $25,000, $50,000 or $75,000, they pay 100% minus the deductible if it's a hit and run, or the insurance truck pays 100% no deductible to the client. Yes?
What about when it's not a damage? Just, I walk out and say, this thing's a mess.
Oh, no, they won't. That's just plain neglect.
Get back into it with your own car.
You gotta file a police report. By the way, guys, here's a release arm on it. The release arm? And it's open, and what's the thing doing? It's not doing anything. So that's a release arm. See how the top and the bottom keeps it from going up or down? And at the top, it's locked in with either a small chain or a bump on the top. And these things are usually 12 feet off the ground, 12 to 14 feet off the ground, so nobody can manipulate it from below.
For you guys in the back, you might not be able to see it, this is the arm coming down, this is the upper piece coming across, this is the lower piece coming across, they just rotate 90 degrees. So, right now, they're in the open position, they're parallel to the arm that they were blocking.
And you see the chain? See the chain right there? So if you see a chain, so these are easy to make. Any guy can make a release arm. You know what I'm saying? To basically lock in a fire escape so nobody pulls it down anymore. But this must be balanced. So 1/3 is usually at the back, 2/3 to the front, and it's a seesaw pivot.
And the goofy piece of that for Portland, while we don't see, there's one that I know that has a release mechanism on it, and that particular device isn't functional at this point. While we don't see those, we do see check chains. And those chains actually have a spring mechanism up at the top where it attaches to the balcony above the counterbalance stairs. Those are legitimate. It's the straight chain with absolutely no relationship whatsoever to the old days style with that spring-loaded mechanism. All it's supposed to do is keep the stairs from overswinging coming up.
Right.
Just keeping it from going up. Basically, what the lower arm on this release device does is just keep it from overextending and going up. So that's Portland's weird twist, so.
Well, it's a pre-existing structure, so it was built, so you have to step on it out 2 or 3 treads. You have to activate it. So in the past, you activated it and it started dropping by itself. Nobody can get it that balanced. It's very difficult. So that check chain is exactly when you get off, she goes up by herself. And so that, at the end, that spring basically lets it push, you know, not snap the chain, it lets it spring the chain, and then basically she'll just do this until the thing goes horizontal. But she's still balanced backwards, which is a standard here in Portland. So don't think you have to fix that. If you want to fix it for your client, you basically want to take some weight out of the box so that she wants to drop. She still has the check chain on it. You build a release arm for it so that now nobody can pull it down even with a pipe pole. Because they're going to have to use their ladder to get on it, get up there, and then open it up and release it to come down. It's made only for the tenants. It's not made for these guys. Got it?
And it's actually a security answer. So there's the place that can't get rid of their counterbalance stair because their balcony is too high. If it exceeds 22, the reach of a 22-foot extension ladder from us, then it's not going to be allowed to be removed. This might be a good answer for them.
Yeah. If it's safety concerns, the release mechanism is the answer to it. It's an anti-theft device.
One of the challenges on those releases, there's no information. You can walk out of it, it's not visibly obvious what it's for.
Yeah, and
Well,
most of
release
these
arm-
actually, when it's in a closed position, it's literally blocking your exit,
Yeah.
so you have to push it to open it.
It meets the code. Single action requiring no special knowledge. It's basically blocking my way as I'm running. So I'm gonna run into it. It's pretty, I don't have to do anything. I'm not gonna climb underneath it. I'm just gonna push it. I'm just gonna get it out of my way. So it's single action requiring no special knowledge. And she's not heavy. It's usually
So what kind of maintenance does that require to keep it operational after 25 or 50?
Oh, the way they build them is so simple that they're, I did it incorrectly. Can't go back like that. But there's no bearings, it's not really tight, it's very sloppy and loose. It's a bar that's 2 feet coming down for 6, 8 feet, and then there's only a 6-inch little bar down here that hangs over the C-channel. And she's going through a washer, or she's going through a pipe or something, and she's no grease ever needed in its entire life, so it's not like rock solid tight. She is sloppy, and so
So
that,
it's just an oversized sleeve with
Yeah.
a pipe or?
right.
So basically, if it ever starts rusting, you have to clean the rust out. You have to treat that.
I've never seen one of those rust out. They're so sloppy and single action that, you know, it's basically, you can make them on site whenever you get there. As long as you have 3/4 or 7/8 round rod, and a lot of times try not to weld those. Try to basically heat the bends so that it's all one single piece. So you heat the 2-foot extension that blocks your way, comes down from 6 to 8 feet down towards the thing, already has the pipe or an angle with the sleeves, and then at the bottom you heat it for the 6 so that, and then you have to back up that 6 with a 45 bar just to basically give it some reinforcement so that sometimes when it hits, she doesn't bend anymore. But I was just gonna go back to show you, it's a sloppy release arm. It's not, it's really built on site.
Stu, do we have many of those, have you seen any of those in Portland?
No, and that's what I was saying, there's only one that I'm aware of that has a first balcony level release mechanism, and that particular one is actually a fancy rollout stair. It drops like the New York ladders, but then it rolls out and becomes steps.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see that one refurbished and put back in operation.
It's very neat.
We've made 2 stabs at it across my career, and
We put the
Somebody
releases in on New
did this.
on the building over in New
See this right here?
so we got a couple up on MLK. So
See the space here, the tube right there, and there's another tube probably at the top of the rail. It's a 6 to 8 foot long. Again, they welded this here, and this is probably a heat vent right there, basically to grab the top and the bottom, that locks it in. At the very top, a lot of times it goes over a bump so that it stays there, or you actually have a chain on it, so that the chain comes from the side and loops into it, so even if somebody from below could try to, the chain prevents somebody from pushing it that way, but when you get to it, it's like, you know, as soon as you stop pushing it, it basically, there's nothing holding it in position.
Yeah, if we were trying to foolproof it, building and designing this today, they'd probably make us put some kind of international sign on it that indicates push and fall or something.
Yeah. And so you got cantilevers that are just always getting smashed by trucks because they hang wrong. If they come down ever so slightly, a truck, a trash truck, a moving truck always clips them. That's why they have to be 12 to 14 feet off the ground.
Actually, we've had a couple of firemen's ladders, which is that goofy thing that Cisco's talking about here. For the city of Portland, we have firemen's ladders on these things. And we had more than a couple of them across the years as they're coming down below the lower balcony. There's your balcony, I don't know, if you have pictures on there, that have been hit by trucks, trains, whatever. If this thing has got an S-curve to it in any way, shape, or form, that ain't right. And it's been hammered. And that makes this balcony system suspect. So when you guys are looking at that and dealing with that.
But that's a lottery ticket also, it's called a lottery ticket.
Yep.
Because now that you smashed the lower ladder and everything else still looks good, the whole system is now out of service, and the whole system now must be refurbished and or load tested, not just fix that piece, because you've basically taken it out of service. Even if it was load tested just a year ago, it has to be reload tested that year, and the whole fire escape needs to be refurbished. Now, if it's never been refurbished, that client gets a free pass, but he's getting the whole thing repaired and painted. If all of a sudden it was just load tested, or refurbished a year ago, and that's the only thing damaged, then you're only gonna fix that piece and then either issue evidence of strength again because the rest of it was fine. So, but a lot of times these lottery tickets are on old rusted fire escapes, and the client is like, oh my God, until they find out that the insurance is gonna pay for it 100%, and it's the truck insurance, not the homeowner's insurance.
And we've had one recently, I believe the property owners tried to do the repair themselves. So if you see the one with the aluminum ladder piece on it, that's not right either.
It's on Eon?
So, guys, here's a 24-story hotel in Chicago where you've got, stringer issues and connections, but you also got, the stringers are no longer connected to the building. Now, the only thing holding this stringer up is the railing system is all one piece connected, passing through. So you got some crazy stuff as you walk up as an engineer, that sometimes you're basically load testing it with your body. Rust in the stringers is one of the biggest problems that you have, because here you are trying to fix the fire escape. So when you do, as an engineer, when you do a plan with anybody fixing a fire escape, one of the first things you gotta work with your vendor is an emergency plan to make it functional until such time that permanent repairs take effect. And what's that mean on this connection here? In order to let the vendors get on it and fix it, they gotta take that bolt out during an emergency plan and put a new bolt in it and leave the rust there. They gotta take all the treads that have ½ inch of rust and do what? Take the bolt out of the front and put a bolt in it for what? To make it functional for who? For the vendors. Then they can start repairing it once you secure the fire escape. Because every now and then vendors get on these things, climb all over it, and what happens to these vendors? Like my guy's father from Chicago. Fell 7 stories to his death. Why? Because of one of these bolts, one of these connections. How long is it gonna hold? We don't know. Treads, when they stop falling by themselves, that's an indication that nobody did that. That's happening naturally because of all the rust that you see in front of you. Trucks back into fire escapes all the time. Railings. You guys are gonna love this one. Sometimes when railings are squished between the seat channel, what's happening in between those two things? Rust jacking. It's eating the rail bottom and it's eating the channel top. Just poor design. A lot of times it's just poor design. Spacers. Sometimes you have spacers in certain grading ones. A lot of the West Coast is made with flats. Not with grading standing up. It's flats, 2-inch flats laying on end. So everything accumulates rust in a connection. These spacers hold it for 1-inch spacing. So a lot of times when these rot out on the inside, you can't fix them. There's no way to fix them.
What role does the U-bolt just between two slats in my deck play. And I heard that you have to have 2 U-bolts per runner.
You're talking about
On the
my
deck
platform?
itself, each fire escape has U-bolts, but they're not tied into a structural component. They appear to be just on the slats. I went under and looked, it's not on a structural portion, and someone told me that those have to have 2 per length of slats.
Usually to help, if you have a piece of flat, 2-inch flat by quarter,
Yeah.
running 10 feet wide. Usually those slats that run this way are not structural. Usually it's the slats that run this way, every 3 feet, let's say. And they run from the front angle frame to the back angle frame. And these flats, which are held down by rivets, okay, a lot of times you'll have a U it's not a U, it's actually a square U, not a round U. It's a square U. It's basically, you can actually lift this, if you were to remove these that go from the nose to the back, and you cut off those bolts, you can actually grab that whole 10-foot by 3-foot wide platform, you can take it away. The way to hold it down a lot of times is when it's down, there's a U on this one, over here, a U over here, and a U over here, holding the grating from falling up. Well, even if those are bad, gratings want to fall down, they don't want to fall up, but that's basically what holds it in position. So a lot of times you remove those U's. So while you're on that point, let's talk about the brackets that have the gussets. And a lot of times these gussets sometimes have 1-inch solids that overlap themselves, and they have a nice bolt in it. So some of the backup, when you don't want to change that bolt out, you can actually, they sell them at Fastenal, for example. You have a U-clamp. And the U-clamp basically is reinforcing the existing structure. You can either drill it if there's enough room, drill and put a new bolt, aside from the other bolt, or take one out, put a new bolt there, or next to it, you basically back up the existing fair to good condition bolt, or you can use a U-clamp to basically keep the original, and behind it put a U-clamp that basically remarries the nose, and this is usually on the nose of this 1-inch solid that goes out and bends, and then there's another one that comes along and does this, and it usually has a bolt through it. If it's welded, we're going to bolt it anyway, because we don't trust welds. But if there's a bolt there that's in great condition and it's solid and it's great, we usually back it up with a U-clamp behind it to basically suspend it. And the theory that they talk about, if I have a belt and it's in good order, and I put suspenders on my belt, what am I doing? So which one is my primary? My suspenders now is my primary, but my belt, which is 50 to 75 years old, is what? Secondary. Yeah, stretching right now, yeah. Guys, so this is the issue with when we get into the treads. This is an elementary school. Treads and rush jacking is one of the biggest areas where firemen are getting hurt. It's treads. Treads. Not full collapses. Treads are what's basically catching a lot of these guys. 1 inch of rust.
And that's actually one of the reasons why we have our visual check sheet for the inspector. You guys, we don't want you stepping out there and getting hurt. If it looks bad, it's bad. You don't have to go any further. And the same for your guys. I mean, if it looks bad, you probably ought to figure out some other way to get out there. Jetpack, lift, I don't know, but something.
So let's, ladders. Ladders are the biggest issue everywhere in the United States. In California, they have the 3-fold ladders, basically almost like going into an attic, and you release it, the 3 come out. So that's very common in California. There's something you don't see up here very often. How about a accordion ladder? And basically when you release these, and these go up to 25 feet, you release it and she's like an accordion, she just opens up. And then she becomes a stiff ladder that you basically climb down. So this is how you get off of building rooftops in California, down in LA.
How does that recollapse and put it back?
There's a crank, see the crank right at the top?
Ah, good.
And you bring it all galvanized. Standard ladders, you know, that basically mount onto the wall. Ladders with weight systems, and they create all kinds of weight systems, but you're supposed to control these weight systems so they're not just dangling there, because in case the cable breaks, what do you get?
Impact.
Impact, chunk of steel. And then you have these goosenecks. Goosenecks are a big problem for a lot of firefighters. They're not, how are they in the roof? Nobody knows. You can't touch the roof. It's a whole whole other game. How they go up and over, and a lot of times it's all original hardware tying it back into the building. So these must be addressed during all inspections. And then you have these ladders. Some people have taken what used to be a permanent ladder to the ground, cut it, and created a flop out. Now, a flop out ladder is legal. And a lot of times they put a chain up at the top so that you can gingerly let out. And as soon as you let out enough of that and it goes beyond a certain point, what happens to your hole? What's it doing? Absolutely nothing. And if there's a dog, a child, or a fireman down below, when that ladder gets pushed by a window by a person, what happens to them? Even if they're wearing a helmet. They're gonna get driven by the arch. Boom, right in the head. So these are not legal. This is what it looks like when it's in an up position. This is what it looks like down in a down position. So whenever there's a notch cut, that is not a standard anywhere in the US. But in New Jersey, they did thousands of these. And we have to basically, on a case-by-case basis, say you can't do that anymore. Got it? So, in getting back to Russ, our biggest issue for the inspectors, whether you're a fire inspector or whether you're an engineer climbing a fire escape, is that rust jacking is doing what to your ability to, when you're paying the hammers? So, Freetown Hamburg, we highly recommend you always paint your fire escapes on the way up. Make sure you're safe going in. This fire escape was a total disaster. It was condemned. Here's the last thing that you guys will love. This is in Elizabeth, New Jersey. This is a slidescape. It's a one-way slidescape. This is the Elizabeth Fire Department, and this is on the rooftop up there. And every floor down below has the same two little orange doors that you basically open in like this, and when you open them, you're looking down this corkscrew made of galvanized metal and tin. And you basically, there's no lights, you don't get handed a flashlight, and there's no potato sack that you get with it. And right down here, guys, see that little piece right there? That's the corkscrew for 12 stories. You corkscrew all the way down until you hit this building.
Designed for use in wool and cotton clothing. I hate to think what polyester would do on that.
And when you get down to the bottom, she doesn't corkscrew all the way to the bottom. At one floor up, she corkscrews it and takes a 90, and she heads at a 45 straight for this iron door with a huge paddle that your feet are supposed to smash into and open this door.
Is there a clown's face painted on it?
And it's a one-way system, and it was part of the code. Slidescapes were part of the code. They weren't taken out of the code for many, many years. Nobody's ever built them anymore, but this is a 1903 building, so this is what they call an Art Deco building, which is very common for the Art Deco buildings to have this. So it has one staircase inside, one elevator, and a slidescape, still in use today. So it's pre-existing non-conforming, but authorized by the fire department. When we went there, nobody had used it or looked at it in many years, so out of the second floor, we sent one of the new rookies in with a rope, and they threw them down there because they didn't know whether they were going to find raccoons or dead people, because nobody had ever gone down. And down below, we couldn't open the iron door from the bottom. So we sent him down with a flashlight. It was funny. It was a rookie. They brought in a rookie. They brought in the fire department. The firefighter. But it was a rookie. They got a rookie to go down there on a rope, and it's funny. And then when he got down there, he kicked the thing open. It was all rusted shut and stuff like that. And but this is not the only place it was used. Because if you remember correctly, but look how dark it is, and if you tumble and fall, and don't forget, every floor is dumping people into it. So you can imagine what this is a rotisserie. This is basically a place to cook as many people as you can during a fire.
And I know that we had at least one of these as an exterior fire escape, 1908 construction,
There you go.
over at 42nd and Powell, the old St. Ignatius Grade School. The
There you
kids
go.
loved it.
Stuff like this.
4 foot wide, spiraled down 3 stories.
Stuff like this, right? So what happened was, these were on many, many buildings, primarily in the military. In a lot of barracks that had second floors, this is how they got out. And the first thing you learn in the military is you take your rock sack and you throw it down there first, because guess what like to sleep in there late at night? Snakes and raccoons. So before you go down, you basically throw something down to clean the chute out, and then the men would evacuate. So nowhere do you have these anymore, unless it's a fun park somewhere. But look, I think this is Japan. See? So this slidescapes are still out there, but they're a one-way system. Guess where I saw this one?
Oh, same
Yeah,
person.
first about yours.
Now, this has to be a building for training future firefighters. You know what I'm saying? Because there's no other reason to make such a fire escape.
No, it could have been at a bordello.
And it has an egress for both sides, you know, depending on which way you're running. But this is the only slide pole fire escape I've ever seen in my life. In a Rutgers building. And I don't know whether that building was office or residential. I think it was a residential, but it makes no sense.
So how do you load test the pole?
Exactly. So is there some kooky things out there? Yeah. Guys, bridges, these are all supposed to be examined. So skywalks on private property, it's an egress, they're supposed to be examined. So, quick question, and we're sort of not going to open up to any additional questions you guys may have. Fire escapes, second means of egress, how about parking towers? How many of them have some sort of metal or cement stairways that are open to the weather? And some older ones have. There's some aluminum fire escapes out there that people are trying to put up there. What's the problem with aluminum?
Oh, there's no problems whatsoever, right?
What's the melting point of aluminum? 1,000. What's the melting point of iron? About 3,000. When there's a flashover, what's the heat on average?
And there's 1,200 degree, right?
Right? So what happens to aluminum if that window below has a fire on it, on an aluminum fire escape, which is legal because it's non-combustible? What happens to the aluminum?
Only parts of it change shape.
Yeah, shape shifting. So, plenty of fire escapes guys out there. There's all kinds of stuff out there that you're gonna see. Silos have fire escapes, bridges have fire escapes. Fire escapes are also used on billboards to get up there and get down. Hotels, now in New England and down in Jersey, Ramada Inns, Hotel Sixes, you know, those guys that have the two-story fire escape systems? They have always a metal step, always outside somewhere, exposed to the weather. And how do you get in your room? An enclosed or an exposed to the weather platform? So that's an exterior fire escape, going to an exterior set of stairs. How many motels have you guys been asking for a certification? Right now, the Ramadas in New England, we're doing the Ramadas over there because they're like, the city of Jersey City is already asking for all the hotels to have their fire escapes because they have thousands and thousands and thousands of people using that egress every day as their main egress. How about the wood structures you guys have in all these buildings? Is this a fire escape or a rear porch? If it has a second set of stairs that makes your second means of egress, what is it? It's a fire escape. Wood or steel. If you read the International Building Code, all exterior, steel or wooden stairs, bridges, balconies, then it says fire escapes must be examined. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. These fire escapes, it's just the tip of the iceberg. How do you get your exterior steel wood stair not to be examined? You enclose it. As soon as you enclose it, nobody can touch it. That's another city official. But you leave it outside to the weather, and it's wood or steel, it needs to be examined. And these things last 25 years if they're pressure treated and properly maintained. And non-pressure treated, how long do they have? 10 to 15? And some of these are hitting 40, 50 years old.
Some are older than that.
So, you got a lot of things out there, guys, that are gonna start coming up in the near future, because once Portland is done with fire escapes, guess what they're gonna start touching? All exterior steel wooden. How many people died in Chicago on the decks? On that deck collapse, five plus years ago? 27?
I think that's right.
27 people died on a deck collapse.
That was a relatively new installation too.
Yeah.
On and on.
How about catwalks? How about handicap ramps? These are all egresses. Installations, you guys got a lot of silos, and you got a lot of, boatyards, you guys got tons of things out there that are by the river. And if they have to fight a fire anywhere near these things, how about this? Whenever you see somebody putting a Home Depot ladder outside their window, what's that mean? What happened there?
They got creative.
That's a single-family home that got turned into a three-family, or it's a single-family home that got turned into a two-family where they converted the attic into what kind of space? Sleeping space, which changes the use of the building, which then requires a fire escape, right? Who normally catches this? Fire prevention or the insurance company catches this? Insurance companies come in and say, you need something out of that window. What will they allow? They'll allow a ladder out the window, but as soon as they're made aware of, no, the law says that since that has changed, you've changed the use of the third floor, we now need a balcony. Can I use a ladder? No. Full set of stairs to the ground? Yes. Why? Because that's what the code requires. A lot of times people are misinformed saying by the insurance company, say, listen, just give me a balcony and a ladder, I'll be happy. But that's not code. The code says if you've changed the use, I need a balcony out there, I need a full set of stairs to here and a full set of stairs down to the ground. And a lot of times this will not pick up the second floor, which doesn't have a second means of egress usually. So a lot of these single family homes, 2.5 stories, are converted. They have a lot of this Mickey Mouse situation, and sometimes for almost 40, 50 years, they've been using one means of egress. So whenever you have a situation where you are not, because I know you guys can't touch residential, right? There's a whole, like, don't touch residential, but if there's a life safety issue, what happens? You get brought in on a life safety issue, and can you inhabit anything that doesn't have two means of egress?
Legally, no.
It's a life safety concern, right? So you might sometimes get backed into a residential situation from the building department.
So they can put a new fire escape on that old building because it's
Yes.
existing?
Pre-existing.
They can put a new means of, secondary means of egress on it, and that's the catchphrase. Whether it becomes a fire escape, the way we recognize fire escapes in Portland, is gonna end up as an appeal item through Bureau of Development Services. Generally speaking, BDS is not gonna allow them to do anything other than an exterior stair, just because fire escapes are a pain. And they know that, and they recognize that, and we still have a bunch of buildings with fire escapes, which is why we're here. So, yeah, they're trying to avoid them, and they don't want to put them up if they can help it. But there are a couple situations where you're now boxed in and you don't have the room for that stair. That's where the appeal will come into play.
Right, and what they're gonna want is you can't go out a window, you have to turn that window into a door. You can't come down the set of stairs that are 24 inches wide, 8 and 8 rise and run. They want you to come out 36 inches wide, 7, 11, all the way down to the ground. That's how simple it is. Now, whether or not it's gonna be a fire escape or a stair, which means they may want you to cover it with a cover. They may want a kick plate on it, which will accumulate snow. So there's all these kind of things, but traditionally, nationwide, what you get on these residential situations where you haven't met the second means of egress and you try to satisfy the insurance, it's the window becomes a door, the fire escape must be at least 3 feet wide, it's 7, 11 rise and run all the way to the ground, and it usually picks up the second floor while you're there. So spirals, when can you use a spiral?
In our system, officially never.
Never. But if you've exhausted all means and you're limited in space, guess what you can throw in there? With approval from the building department and the fire department, spiral. But if you have a big backyard, guess what you'll never have? Spiral. But if you have just no space, you can go back down to a ladder and or a spiral. Otherwise, you're never going to get approved. Pre-existing, you just have to examine them and test them accordingly. And we're at the end. This is the end. Guess what people think this is a means of egress? Is a bag ladder a means of egress? People think they are. They're not. This is a third means of egress. So you can have a bag ladder in your closet, and you can hook it to your window and throw it out the window, but it's not an approved second means of egress. Okay? So some people think it is, and that's what they've been getting away with. It's not. Even those ladders you can buy from Jami, you know what I'm saying? The aluminum ladders you self-install, they're not a second means of egress. They're a third means of egress. Okay? So they're not an approved means of egress. An approved means of egress is a balcony and a full set of stairs to the ground.
In most cases, what we're looking at in the city of Portland, when people are looking for those fire escape ladders and or the pop-out ladder that they've had there, they're just enhancing their means of egress out of the second floor window, which according to the city of Portland, you can jump.
I was going to show you the two pieces that are out there, the bag ladder system and then the ones for the 22-story fire escape, systems that they have available, but right now, since it's just fire escape, I just wanna open it up, we got about 10 minutes. What kind of questions do the inspectors have for the engineers in the room? What kind of questions do the vendors who repair these fire escapes and paint these fire escapes have for the engineers and for the city? What kind of questions does the city have for some of the engineers and some of the vendors? Let's open it up.
What's a building owner looking at in cost on this stuff? I mean,
Let's go to Portland, we got FX here, right? 5-story, typical, 20 feet across, you know, full refurb, full paint job, with a cantilever to the ground, and you can use a $10,000 plus minus on that. And I'm talking about 10,000, it's not uncommon to spend $40, $50, $60,000 on something.
The structure hasn't been touched in 40 years?
Yeah, full refurb,
So you're 5 floors
5 floors,
or 5 platforms?
5 platforms and a cantilever on the
Probably
ground.
$75,000, $100,000.
How much?
75 to 100,000.
75, so it's about 20 grand a floor. So if you figure, as a plus minus in size, it can be 10 to 20 grand a floor. So they consider the cantilever and a piece of a platform already in one floor. Then a stair plus another. So each floor is a platform and a stair. So 10 to 20 grand per, don't forget, full structural and a paint job.
So a 5-floor or 6-floor building, maybe have 10 units, say it's residential, got 10 units a floor, so you got 60 units, and he's probably getting $1,000, even if it's subsidized, $1,000 a unit. And so you're going there and giving him a number that just blows his mind when he looks at his revenue stream. That's
Right.
why you get all the resistance.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, we're getting the resistance just about the engineering fees.
Right. Yes?
Yeah, and the saddest part of where we've come and the 5-year rotation on this thing, the way our system is set up right now, it's a hard 5 years. And that's not where I was hoping to see us go. I would like to reserve the right as the authority having jurisdiction to be able to say, this one sucks eggs, we need to do it. I know it's only 5 years, but we need to do it. For the ones that have been completely refurbed, overhauled, ground up, tested and everything, how long will it probably be before we need to do that again? I would like to see that timeframe actually be more relaxed, with the authority having jurisdiction and retaining the right to be able to order it at any time. But our frequency for the hard, fast code frequency being in the 15, 20, 25 year range.
For the low test.
You know, 25-year cycle made sense to me, and
Yeah.
Cisco. and
Well,
we're
That's
talking
what we use
about-
nationwide.
Extending your time frame along with the Tacoma model or whatever, where they're doing maybe this
Yearly.
guy has to do the yearly certification on his own.
And that might be a piece that will work into our system as well. It's,
And if I can
I'm not real thrilled with where we're at right now, but I'm pleased that we're actually making progress, and our guys are actually being able to tell people, get it looked at, get it fixed. We've given a couple of extensions in time to a couple of occupancies, one of them being a three-story wood structure, one level of fire escape from the 3rd floor down. The owners occupy the 3rd floor. They're renting out the other 2 floors, 4 units total. They don't make enough money to pay for this load test, and we're looking at it's attached to a wood wall, and we're gonna throw how many pounds per square foot on this thing? Are you sure you wanna go there? So, one of your associates is actually arguing that point with the city and trying to figure out a way to modify the load for this type of structure, because it doesn't make sense.
Nobody, and it's just, you know, nobody in the United States, I'm never aware of anybody double loading it, ever. It's only Portland that, and in Eugene, it went totally out of control, and everybody, as an engineer in Eugene, has sort of stepped back, because it's just totally out of control. Not only do they want it repaired, they want it load test, they want it reverse engineered. So it all depends, everybody's sort of getting their heads around this thing, but I've been at this for 40 years, and what I have is probably one of the largest libraries of data of fire escape, 5-year cycle information. All you have to remember it's all about connection management. Every fire escape that you get, as soon as you take apart any connection, clean it, prime it, inject it with 35 to 50-year silicone, close it, goop it up, put the bolt in tight, and then you paint the fire escape. You make sure the client keeps it painted. They're supposed to spot paint it every 3 to 5 years. They're supposed to fully paint it every 5 to 7 years, because you read a Rust-Oleum can, it says to do what after 7 years? do it all over again. So you don't guarantee the paint job to anybody, because you're painting all over fire stations, no. But structurally, the national norm on our side is we give them a 10-year structural warranty, because you've silicone, it's connection management. You seal the connections. The client keeps the rest of the thing painted. You go to any fire escape, between two connections, the bar is perfect, there's nothing wrong with the bar. But as soon as it hits a joint or a corner, what happens? It accumulates leaves, bird poo, dust, anything, what happens? It grows to what you have there, because it's trapped. So connection management is, and I think it's in your writings, you must put something in there for water intrusion. And that is very simple. It's 35-year latex silicone, because it's paintable, or it's 50-year silicone, black for example, but it's non-paintable. The problem with that is sometimes when you put it on, and you try to paint it later on, it won't accept paint. So we tend to use the 35-year latex silicone because it's paintable, but it's all about connection management. You get the 10-year warranty on the structural that should be given by any vendor doing anything for these clients. That makes these guys happy that the thing is guaranteed to continue and get that 15 to 25 year cycle on the load testing that he's going to be forcing, or 15 to 25 years from now, a fire escape that was fully refurbished today, 25 years from now, do I have to load test it, or can I change all the fasteners? Change all the fasteners, I avoid what then? Load test, and I get brand new bolts in it, which is what? Other evidence of strength, which is what? That's all you worry about. Verification of the wall, which is an unknown, change all your fasteners. So you want a load test, go ahead. But it's crazy wackiness, you know, helicopter dropping in bags of sand from inaccessible locations, or just refurbish these fire escapes that have never been refurbished in their entire lives. Change the hex heads, change the rivets, or if there's room there, create backup bolts on the same areas. And every welded connection, guys, how much are they worth? No, they're $1 million. They're $1 million. Every weld that you let go and you eyeball it and you sign the name on it, it's $1 million. Okay? Now that's proof. That's I've got a master's degree in reverse stupidity. I don't know how to do it right. I know all the wrong way to do it, and I've been doing it wrong for 40 years, and I eliminated all the wrong ways to do it, and we finally came to what we have here. We just have a few more to go. Any more questions? Because you guys, that was a very good question.
I just wonder, is there much of a trend for getting rid of fire escapes? I mean, is there much of a push just to get rid of them?
I can answer that. Ready? Because you're going to try to answer that. And the answer is, they're going to be around forever. Because everybody's trying to get rid of them. You have some of these crazy buildings, unless you build a brand new, the only reason why you have a crazy building in any old town that can still be used, residential, commercial, loft space, whatever, is because you have a fire escape. You try to meet that 75-foot rule, and you try to tear out the inside and put a stair here and a stair over there that doesn't conflict with the hysterical committee, and you know what I'm saying? By the time, it's going to be cheaper to knock it down, and then somebody's going to freak out because the facade is gone. You guys got to start hugging fire escapes, because they're the bastard child of egress, and they satisfy every old building's requirements for egress, even for a clock tower. So they're not going away. Everybody wants to get rid of them, but they don't realize that the only reason why every crazy building, factory, garage, outhouse is being occupied, treehouse is being occupied, is because the fire escape was the answer in 1900. It's the answer today to some of these row houses that have, what, 20 feet, and the staircase on the side. And it used to be a single family 5-story, but now it's 5 condos. What's the answer? It's the fire escape in the back, and a lot of them don't even have ladders or staircases. They have connecting balconies because they cross a firewall. That was the first fire escape, was balconies crossing firewalls, where you walked over to your neighbor's window and kicked it in. That was your means of egress. I'm saying, so fire escapes are not going anywhere. They're around. So the only thing is, for engineers and for everybody, you start dealing with connection management, the rest of it will take care of itself. And if for 10, 15 years the clients don't paint it, don't do anything, guess what this guy throws out? Load test. Yep. Any other questions? These are great questions.
I just observed, blood testing is not all that expensive. Yours and my experience might be different. The connections are expensive.
Yeah. The work on the fire escape is where the expense comes in.
That's the expense.
And then when some of the owners are not bothering to listen to the last part about cleaning and painting, and that is a major push under our program now. The current procedures that we've got, you guys are now, congratulations, you won the bid. You have my sympathy. Now you get to drop the plans for your testing and or refurbishment, go down to the Bureau of Development Services and enter into their permit process, which if you have not individually done it or anyone from your office has been dealing with it and they haven't told you that there's a problem with the fee calculation, send the same person each and every time is what I'm hearing. And watch the fee calculation and then go through it and then recalculate it and make sure they did it right. Because one particular outfit has been saving somewhere around 25 to 50% on every freaking permit because they're pushing the point on the calculation. So, not that there's a problem down there, but it sure sounds like there might be.
If I may, I want to throw the cost with it. Some people think that it's more costly to load test a fire escape, or it might be more costly to change the fasteners, right? I think it's going to be a balance depending on each one. So right now, remember this, the testing company is only doing what the engineers wrote up as a load test criteria. And you stick me in an alleyway between two buildings where nothing can get my sandbags in there, I can't get a crane in there, and this has to be all done, gingerly walking on the camel's back with the last straw that I'm bringing up there. Who's taking all the liability there? Is it the testing company or the engineer who generated a load testing criteria, submitted to the city official for a proper way to do this, satisfying OSHA, building permits, fire officials? Because what could happen if if it passes? What happens? Yay, check cash, bang. What happens when it fails? What do we have? Fire trucks, police department, news crews, and guess who's gonna get sued first? If it's me getting load testing a fire escape based on your criteria that you told me, you should have warned me that there was no access. We should have told me that if I have to physically, it's the guy sawing on a limb, he's sawing the limb, like, is this safe? Yeah, come on, just keep cutting.
It's okay.
You know what I'm saying? So this whole bag thing, just remember, when you're load testing, you're not directly connected to the client. The engineer has submitted a repair criteria, he submits a repair criteria, which is what he signs off on, that was done, and he also submits a load test criteria. So the guy's carrying the stick. So sometimes when you look at it, when it can be done with a cherry picker and it can be done properly, and there's, you backed up the load testing with some supports above holding in case there's a collapse. There's so much to do it right way, because you know what we do? Not everybody's doing it correctly. It's sort of like the best guess, what's really safe kind of, but it's so wacky because nobody's ever really done it. If you look anywhere to go find a load test criteria for fire, for bridges there exists, but for fire escape, you can't find it. It's made up on the spot, and the liability lies with you. And if anything happens, let's go together to court, because I'm gonna say, I don't know what's going on. I only did what this guy told me.
Yeah. So all of that stuff's coming along. What we're looking at right now in the permit process is you guys go through and you're working on it, and you're finishing everything up. Our friends at the Bureau of Development Services are gonna be giving their final approval. Once they've given that and put it into their track system, which stands for something, and they call it Amanda, whatever, their permit tracking system, I'm going in and looking at that. Hopefully you're sending a copy of the affidavit to them and to me, to our office. Right now they end up landing on my file. I verify that it's finalized out down there, then I come out and I do the final visual for our office. If it has not been cleaned and painted, it will be cleaned and painted. That's one of the reasons why it's landed on my desk instead of everybody's desks. They said, okay, we're gonna consolidate this and try and coordinate. So that is a piece of the puzzle that's gonna prolong the agony if that hasn't been built into the system for that particular client. Once we've got eyes on saying she's clean, she's painted, all the minor repairs appear to have been taken care of, all the major repairs are signed off by our friends at PDS, via you guys, then I'm gonna be putting all that stuff together, and that's when these little green signs come out, and we'll get hung on. That's all part and parcel of the current design program.
In progress.
Yeah, it's an ongoing work of art. There are things within this document.
You're the most advanced guys. You're the most advanced on this.
Yep. There are still things that need to be fixed. I think we still say welding is the preferred method of repair. that needs to be struck and removed.
Oh, the
We've had discussions.
$1 million.
Yeah, it's just those things that are there.
No hammers allowed.
Hammers are still allowed, that becomes a part of,
What do you mean by hammer?
basically what you're doing,
Ping pong,
32 ounce.
I thought there was somewhere in there that.
No, but that's for the engineers, that's who's.
That's for you guys' ends of it.
Yeah, that's,
My guys are not gonna be doing the
Oh, yeah,
hammer
yeah.
testing anymore. We used to go back over a little bit of the history of how we got here. The fire escapes were built. They were gorgeous, they were beautiful. It was the answer to God's little problem here in Portland. Well, that was a great idea too. Then they sat there and they sat there and they sat there, and somebody finally said, you know, this fire escape's looking pretty bad. We should go out and check it. So they went out and they checked it. And that's their test. And before I came into the office, which is way freaking long ago, we actually had about a 300-pound member who was assigned testing of fire escapes. And he went out and jumped on the freaking fire escapes. I wouldn't have wanted to be on the rescue crew responding to pick his sorry buns up after he crashed, but thankfully, he never did break any of them so badly that he ended up on the ground. His name was Charlie, I know his last name too, but that was before I came in. When I came in, they handed me a 16-ounce claw hammer and said, go beat on that fire escape. 3 steps in a row went out from under me because my directions were to start at the top, come over the gooseneck of the ladder, come down the fireman's ladder, get on the top balcony, come down the steps and beat on them, ping pong them as I'm coming down. And I had 3 steps in a row go out from under me that I had not ping jumped. I landed on a deck because they were the last 3 steps in the flight. Didn't please me at all. That sucker had more orange tape on it than you could believe could go onto a fire escape. It was all gone the next day because the building owner didn't like the orange surveyor's tape. Back then, we didn't have cell phones, so I stopped at the payphone right at the corner of that building, and I called my boss and said, so what do we do now? Because now he's removed not only all the safety flagging for the tenants, he's removed all the safety flagging for the firefighters. And I'm going, this ain't gonna stand. But I have no attitude issues about this. So that was the next evolution of what we did. We continued for about 15 years, beating the holy P-whiz out of every connection on those fire escapes. We busted a lot of stuff. They were repaired either with welding or bolts, but we didn't require complete repair, just repair of the stuff that was broken. And we told them to look for other points that were there. There's a lot of rust jacking that was brought up and shown. We did a lot of it. We also required sandblasting and painting at that point. The research that we put into it was that if you did hand prep using power grinders or hand scraping and then painted it, you got 2 to 3 years. 2 1/3 years is what the paint test resulted in before you had started having paint failure. If you sandblasted it to SSPC 6, which is a near white clean steel, you could get 10 1/3 years. So when we see a really crappy looking fire escape, we'll tell them to sandblast. We want that sucker taken clear down clean, so the next time you paint it, it's gonna be a good paint job for a long time to come.
EPA standards now.
And EPA standards say now you can't sandblast it, so you're gonna have to hand scrape this puppy down, get everything off, and then take it to SSPC 6. However you're gonna do that.
Very
But at that point, you can probably sandblast, so once you've gotten rid of all the lead.
Yeah.
You know,
You let
so
it.
that's only a minor cost increase. So we got into all that stuff, we were there, then we got into the load testing, and we stepped away as an office, and that was a direct result of 2 of our members in the office that fought for about 4 years to get our firefighters, our inspectors, away from having to take a hammer out and beat on. That's where we're at. So now you guys have the opportunity of, if you got a question, beat the whole P-whiz out of it. I highly recommend the hammer test. We used a 24-ounce ball peen for most of my career, mostly because the 32-ouncer was too heavy. That was why we had the 24 ounces. But we were just doing the initial site testing. We've had people with needle guns, which is a real cool air-powered gun that has all these little rods in the end of it.
Can't use
Just beat the holy little P-whiz out of those connections, knocked a lot of the rust out by doing that. Great. Unfortunately, they were just not taking the step out, removing the tread, cleaning it, putting everything together, and caulking it. They were simply needle gunning all the rust that they could get out. Then they'd throw a bunch of primer in there and try and bolt that thing closer together and paint it. So not quite as good a seal as what we're talking about here today. So there are some improvements that have come along, some nice steps there. One of the biggest questionable improvements is the permit process. And you have my sympathy for having to deal with that, but that's what we've got right now. BDS is trying, and I'm sure that they'll eventually get their permit process figured out to where it's a real smooth, easy process. And that each of the engineers, as you guys come up with a system that you're using for your load testing and or anything else, you're gonna be able to put this thing together as a package because you pushed the button and told the computer to print it. And it's custom tailored for this building, and then it's custom tailored for this building with very minor modifications. And I'm hoping that that's gonna be the answer for being able to bring the price down a little bit for folks. But it's still labor.
Yeah.
You've still got a lot of
Labor,
time on the
EPA.
ground that's gonna just keep that price up there. And eventually, we may see an improvement on the timing. Load test weights were an issue. At this point in time, the best argument that you can have is with our friends at BDS, Mike Waglitz in particular. You've got to convince him that the 200 pounds per square foot is not an appropriate load quantity, that it should be reduced to whatever. They were designed at 100.
The national standard was 100.
You know, so use that. We've got to get them convinced first. They are the engineers of record from the city, and Mike's shop is the one that's handling that. I've got a fire marshal who was very much attached to that, and that's why it got put in here. He is the fire marshal still, so if you can convince Mike and his crew, you might be able to get them to convince the fire marshal.
Well, Mike down at the development office, his case is that he's not gonna say you can take exception to the building code. So what he's pushing is just saying that if you want me to sign off that meets current building code, even though the building's 100 years old, that's all he's doing. I'm not trying to defend him, I'm just saying I've been
So
in
that's-
some debates with him, and that's all he's saying. If the city wants to say you don't have to meet current building code, tell me and I will do what the city wants to do, but that's, he just doesn't want to hang out his department.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but it may actually be something that where politically, the group of folks that are working in this alongside of you, y'all come together and develop a unified voice to deal with the city, and you may have to go over his head to the council. It may be a political football to get some of this stuff straightened out, but basically, that is a trip point that's there right now. There are time extensions available. It's not laid out in here that it's available because that's something that's come about since this got posted. Just because we're going, whoa, $200 wood frame building, this is gonna be interesting. I wanna be across the street with my good camera taking the pictures, maybe video, get our TV crew out there. But yeah, that's, we've gotta get some answers to it, and we're relying on you guys to get those answers. We're also relying on you guys as the coordinators for any given job and the people working it to be able to say, I know that the fire marshal's office is looking for this, 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 and this. We're looking for that thing to be looked at closely. We're making sure that all the connections are fixed. Even the stupid one where the handrail comes down and returns to the top of the handrail for the guardrail around the fire escape dock. Don't be skipping those. If you have to break the stairs free for your load testing, make sure you reconnect those stairs. There should be those U-bolts holding the deck down to the main support rods. If they're missing, find something that's gonna work to replace them, because that's what we're looking for. Stainless steel nuts, bolts, and washers, yes. We don't wanna see the old galvanized stuff out there. We've shied away from that long enough now. We're saying, no, stainless is available, let's go with the stainless, then we don't have to question the integrity of that particular fastener for a long time to come. 25 years may become that target mark. It's not officially in our system yet, but I think that's something that the younger folks in this group might actually be around long enough to see become an issue and be clarified that way.
If I may add just one more thing to your permit, nationwide now, not just here. Nationwide, to save some money for vendors, you have a $10,000 job, $4,000 of it is paint, your permit is only for $6,000. Number two, if you're maintaining a fire escape, and you walk into the building department, you send your representatives in there, your engineer, or you walk in with your license, and you speak with a building official, you say, hey, what are you doing? Hey, I'm scraping and painting this fire escape. Look, you don't need a permit for that. I say, great, I'm also changing the fasteners on this fire escape. Oh, you changing anything structurally? You're adding a platform? No. Oh, you don't need a permit for that either. Got it? As soon as you start touching things structurally, or start removing things structurally, or start adding things structurally, it triggers a permit. So right now, you have another one that you guys need to get this line, so save some money on a $100,000 job, 40 grand of it is paint, you're only gonna pull a permit if one is triggered for 60 grand. If you're changing fasteners, there's no permit. In 9 out of 10 cases, even after we send in our representatives or we go and try to pull a permit, the same official, and it's not always unification behind the thing, the guy goes, you don't need a permit for that. Got it?
And then-
All of a sudden you ask for a card, because you're gonna need that card on your truck in case somebody comes down and says, Lord, say, I went to pull one, they said no. Load testing now has a $600 or $900 start fee on that. What is
I
that?
believe it's 600.
$600 just to apply the process of starting for load testing. So, engineers, vendors, and everybody, be aware that there's a gray area that by sending your licensed vendor in or your engineer in to speak with people in Portland, Corvallis, and Eugene, not everybody has the same standard, and some will say, if you're painting it anywhere in the nation, there's no permit needed. You're changing fasteners in the nation, it's subject to the on a case-by-case basis with the building inspector you find there that day. And he may say, if you're just changing fasteners and you're not swapping out material and you're not extending a balcony, there is no permit. But you start structurally touching this, so you may need to speak with your guy to say, when have we reached that? So if this is a spot repair, if you're doing a full scrape, spot fastener, swap out, and then it's gonna go to a load test, is there a permit needed for that first phase of scraping and painting, minor swap out of the bolts?
And within our jurisdiction, definitely make contact with BDS, Bureau of Development Services. Get the name and phone number of the individual you talk to, and especially if they're telling you no permits needed.
Got it?
Document that, keep that with your records. Our guys will probably be looking for that information, or whoever's in my position will be doing that follow-up, because if they don't require a permit, what do we do with the affidavit now?
But by the way, it
It's gonna go to our
started,
system.
yeah, it started with an
How's it
engineer,
gonna get in there?
but it started with an engineered report, so this is not being done. He's already got an engineer's report to start this all off, so even before any repairs are being done, there was an initial examination that he already got. So whether or not there's a permit pull for painting and a fastener swap out, he's already well aware of this project because he already got the engineer's report from the beginning. I'm just trying to say to you guys that sometimes you're pulling permits on the full cost of the project, and you can save some permit fees because painting is never a permittable activity. And you can save hundreds of dollars on your permit fees if you take out, you have to break it out in your contract, so that helps. But you guys need to get that, because there are some people that they automatically do the process, and there's some people saying, you know what, I'm painting and I'm changing some fasteners, I've asked the right people, I have a card, and they said there's no permit needed, and he gets made aware of that Joe Smith said that for what I see on this report from this engineer that told me, yeah, if they say no permits needed, go ahead. But as soon as you start extending a balcony, creating a catwalk on the roof, sometimes that triggers for that portion only. So here's a $100,000 job, $25,000 is this new catwalk over the roof. Guess what you're pulling a permit for? $25,000. Guess who's watching the whole show? The engineer. Guess who he's in contact with? This guy. Guess who he's satisfying? Guess who he's satisfying? Guess who he's satisfying for the code? The building inspector, because he's just collecting a fee for the activity of making sure you're building the catwalk to code. Guess who gets the final certification when everything is all said and done? Guess who does the final walkthrough? Guess who then comes in and signs off the building permit, if there is one, that has nothing to do with the certification? The building official. Guess who collects all these fees and makes all the money? Them. Guess who does all the work? And that's another problem, is that a lot of times, I don't know if this is permittable, or if this is a fee structure that can be, because I think what's happening here, there's a hijacking going on by the building department, but there's not enough competition coming back.
It was a ping pong. We actually took the ping pong ball and served that sucker across the net to them. Mostly because they had the engineers for reviewing the submitted plan.
May I ask you, now with the International Fire Code of 2012 coming back your way, does that change everything now? Say that the
Doubtful.
the report must
We are
be
the
sent
city
to
of
the
Portland.
fire official?
It's, actually, the affidavit is being sent to us as well as them, so when you guys are kicking in the paperwork, kick it to both departments, and that way you know you've got yourself covered, and if somebody loses it, it's gonna be in one or the other, and hopefully it'll end up in both. The design of our program is it'll reside in their permit system and be in our computer system, so that's all there. Any other questions right now at this point?
A lot of this information is on nationalfirescapeassociation.org, so.
I want to say thank you very much for coming and participating in this thing today. For our guys, you know where to find me. That's there. For you folks, I got my card here. If you want a card, feel free. You can also track me down through the department, so.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Pick on him too.